Tonight's class is called Wait and See. It's called Wait and See. And I brought you a number of different sources and different ideas and stories as well this time around that I think really bring out this idea that an amazing reframe for life is to be when you're in a difficult situation, when you're handling a tough time, when you're handling a moment in your life which is sometimes you don't see where the salvation will come from, where it's so difficult, so hard. There's a lovely little reframe you can have, which is called, let's just wait and see. Let's wait and see what will happen in the end. Let's wait and see what will come of this. Let's wait and see. Yes, it looks so difficult. Yes, it looks so tough. Yes, it looks so harsh and maybe, it's overwhelming in every sense. But wait and see. Ma yeh basof in Hebrew means, what will be in the end? What will be in the end? We have to hold tight and see what will be in the end. And I think, again, we're going to go through these sources. I'm going to show you these things inside. We unfortunately live in a time right now where patience is very hard to come by. And it's only getting worse with the sort of technology speeding things up the way it does. They now say the average is like maybe 10 seconds before someone gets agitated when they're waiting in line, or they're waiting for their phone to reload or to connect to the internet to where it's going to be. People, the idea nowadays, go into a shop and watch people queuing up in a shop, right? There's a Tesco Express near me, and when you go in there, normally it's quite quick. You go in, you beep beep, and you're out. But there'll be often sometimes a bit of a queue. Now, when I was a kid, you queued all the time. If you went to Tesco's or what have you, Sainsbury's, I'm not going to get product placement issues, but whatever supermarket you went to, you would normally be standing in the line a little bit, right? Do you remember everyone used to do it? We used to stand in line. Nowadays, notice yourself, notice your own. Check in with yourself when you're standing in line and you wait for more than a minute, how agitated you start to get. Well, the first thing you normally do is pull out your phone and start using that opportunity to check your whatevers, have a little flick and read. But ultimately, after a while, people just can't handle it. So they get sometimes quite aggressive because it's like waiting a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. I'm not used to waiting. I don't want to wait. No one wants to wait anymore. People aren't ready to wait. And that, by the way, flows into the way we see the world. We want the answers to our problems now. We want to be able to make sense of things right away. The trip to Poland around 12 years ago, and on that trip, we sat together at night to process what happened, and one of the guys there was, asking so many questions, and obviously it came to the question of like, how did God let this happen, and how can there be a God, and how can we understand this? And I need to. And he said, I want to know now. I want to understand this. I need to understand it. And I said to him, I want to apologize to you, but unfortunately, there's no Google, just tap it in. Why did the Holocaust happen? Enter, and you'll get the answer straight away. In fact, I think ChatGPT has probably made it even harder for us, right? Because even that made, enter, and you've got a bunch of answers. You tap into the, ChatGPT, explain why God allowed the Holocaust to happen, enter. It will come up with a certain amount of answers. But we want that for our problems in our life. We want to be able to press enter on the problems of our life and have an instant answer, an instant understanding, an instant take on why these things are happening. And when we don't get that instant answer, we get frustrated, we get upset. But if we can switch that into the new frame, to frame it in a different perspective, which is called wait and see. Because actually the whole purpose of life is the waiting. It's the waiting. It's that point that and we'll see this through, like I say, the sources I brought today. It's actually all about the wait. It's about the patience. It's about taking the time. It's about saying that, yes, you might see this tendency today of some evil people, but we wait and see. We have a very long, the way the Jew sees history, we've got a very long angled lens, very wide angled lens. We've been here for a very, very long time. As a religion, we've been here for a very, very, very long time. And we have very, very wide angled lens. We can see things in a very different way when we know just how long we've been around this world. It's quite funny, actually. I was in preparing this class tonight. There's a line that they asked the Chinese leader, and I forgot his name now. Xi, that was his name. They asked him what was his take on the French Revolution. What do you think of the French Revolution? To which he answered famously,
I don't know. I just know his name.
Oh, he's the current leader now. Oh no,
Oh,
this was
sorry.
this is the 1970s, the early 70s. Henry Kissinger met, I think his name was Zhou, Zhou, and asked him, what's your take on the French Revolution? To which he famously said it was in 1972 or something. He said, it's too early to tell. Has anyone heard that before?
No.
It's quite a famous anecdote. They asked the Chinese leader, what's your take on the French Revolution? And he said, it's too soon to tell. And people love to tell this story. It's like a beautiful example of like 1789, it's nearly 200 years later, but it's still too early to tell. We don't, And I've been telling that story for many years and I often quote it. Unfortunately, today I was in my research for your class, ladies and gentlemen. I found that I had to a bit of myth busting. It's a bit of a myth.
Bit of what?
A myth.
He never said it.
He did, but he was referring to the 1968 French uprisings in the university, the students, when they were in 1968, when they were all uprising in the streets. And Henry Kissinger asked him, and it was lost in translation, but he was basically, what do you think of this 1968 French student revolution? To which he said, it's too soon to tell. But it's such a shame, like, let's pretend, at least,
So there's 1 minute. Are you saying the Chinese leader's reference was to the original French Revolution?
No, the Chinese, he was referring to the 1968
And who was
student revolution.
Kissinger was
Referring to that as well. I think it was going to that as well.
Oh.
It's just that somehow when the translations all went through, someone wrote French Revolution and they just presumed it meant French Revolution of 1789, which is a great soundbite and everyone loves it, and we love to quote it, but unfortunately it's actually not true. Okay, but let's not the truth get in the way of a good story. Yeah, come on, Simon. No, let's not let the truth get in the way there. So it's a nice story. Because I've quoted that so many times, and who loves quoting that, right? Jonathan Sacks would always quote that thing. When they asked the American leader, what's his take on the French Revolution, his answer was, it's too early to tell. Okay, but he was only referring to 4 years earlier. Okay, putting that aside, I've got enough for you here today. Don't worry, I've got enough for you here today that you'll be able to get a very deeper understanding of this idea of things taking time, waiting. Now, actually, as I brought for you in the first two sources, we as a people are used to this idea of waiting for things to happen. Of not taking things quickly and easily. In fact, there is a law in the Torah, kosher food, right? What kind of foods are kosher? Kosher animals. We know what foods are non-kosher. What fruits aren't kosher? What fruits are not kosher to eat?
Broccoli, but that's a vegetable.
The broccoli is totally kosher. The
Raspberries.
insects inside the broccoli might be problematic.
Raspberries.
Broccoli, no, these are all kosher fruits, just that the insects would be problematic. What makes a fruit not kosher, Chevra?
If it was picked before the tree was 3 years old.
Boom, well done, Simon. You're through to the next round.
You cribbed that because you read the thing.
He knows that. Actually, there's a few things. First of all, also, that not just that, there's a few other things, which is that, of course, in the times of the temple, they would give the tithes, the truma and maser, okay, and that could also cause problems if there was X amount of food, you give the produce to the Kohanim. That was for the Kohanim only. So if you weren't a Kohen, you couldn't eat that. Putting that aside, if you have a tree and within the first 3 years fruits are produced, you cannot eat the fruits of the first 3 years. It's what's called orla, okay? So if your tree's produced apples in the first 3 years, you cannot eat it. It's like eating something non-kosher. It's like eating bacon, I suppose. You're eating non-kosher food by eating an apple from a tree which is under 3 years old.
Why is that?
Because the Torah says so. Look at this. Source A. Well, Denise, you segued beautifully there. Why is that? It's because the Torah says so. In source A, okay, when you enter the land and plant any tree for food, you should regard its fruit as forbidden. For 3 years it shall be forbidden for you not to be eaten. You can't eat those fruits for 3 years. Now you're sitting there waiting, you can't wait for it, By the way, just putting it aside, the fourth year, you can't just eat it anyway. You have to take part of it to Jerusalem, and you go on your 3 foot festivals, which obviously Keith would be there leading the charge with his ox. But you're going to go to Yerushalayim, you're going to eat the fruits in Yerushalayim, you take it with you. It's called Revisk. It's called what do you call Revius? It's Revius, Kedusha Revius. I can't remember the name now. It's Revius. The idea of the 4th year. It will come to me in the middle of this year, don't worry, I'll remember the name. But the 4th year. In the 4th year, you take it to Jerusalem, it's holy. And the 5th year, you can actually start munching away on your apples. But for the first 3 years, definitely not. Look at this beautiful source from the Kli Yakar. The Kli Yakar was the great Rabbi Reframe Lunchitz. He lived just after the Maharal in Prague. In fact, he's buried right next to the Maharal in the cemetery there in Prague. Kli Yakar is one of the most incredible commentators in the Torah. I'd like to thank Mark in advance for volunteering to read source B for us. Now, even the first line itself goes a long way to tell us about this idea. Denise asked why. Now, it's a good opportunity to take a time out and remember, why anything? Why do we keep kosher? Why do we do any of our laws? The answer is simply because Simon says, because Hashem says so. Right? Now, but we do have something called ta'amei ha-mitzvot. Ta'amei ha-mitzvot is the reason behind mitzvahs. Ta'am means reason, it also means taste. It means it gives like a taste of the mitzvah, but it's not the reason why. I talk about this oftentimes with Chevra when they talk about kosher. And people say the kosher laws are there because pigs, for example, are very dirty creatures, and they roll around in the muck, and that's why we don't eat pig, right? It's a health thing. The problem with that is, of course, that if tomorrow they discovered, a strain of pig that was very healthy, kept itself nice and clean, had a mani-pedi every day and went into jacuzzi, and not as that, but its meat was found to be a superfood with all the vital vitamins and minerals, it was the most healthy food you could eat, we wouldn't suddenly eat pork. Or that pig, because we do it because it's not kosher. However, there are some reasons behind the health one. The rolling in the muck isn't necessarily a good reason. There are other reasons. The animals that have split hooves and chew the cud generally are slower. They're not predatory. You are what you eat. We try not to eat animals like that. Again, why do we do this? Because Hashem says. But there is also a way to get some taste of the reason as well. It's not the reason why we do it, but it's a reason to explain it in a way that makes it palatable. And so Mark's going to take it. Go for it, Mark. Source B.
Many commentators have explained the reason for this commandment as follows. Since it was a custom of the Amorites, a pagan practice, to perform various tricks to make a tree produce fruit before its proper time, the Torah forbade such practice.
So first what he's saying here is that the people living in the land of Israel, which we are not allowed to copy their ways, they would actively do things to hurry it all up, to make it fast. We want it quick. Yalla, as they say.
I can just raise a question here at this stage.
Sure.
Obviously, we're all aware today of the modern agricultural practices to accelerate plant growth one way or another. So, arguably, if you follow this principle, you'd say today, if that's a principle that's meant to endure and apply to everything, we shouldn't be eating almost anything.
Chickens.
Well, this.
For example.
First of all, I agree with you. This refers to trees, for tree products, things that grow in the ground. It's not the same thing. But the idea is that if you plant a tree, you have to wait 3 years. Even today, whatever happens, you have to. So the laws of oil still apply today. If you go to Israel, they will have a hechsher. If you look on the hechsher, it will say on the hechsher that there is no. If it's a good hechsher, it will say below chashash orla. There's no worries of orla in this fruit. So you in a hechsher today you'll have that in your fruits.
No, I understand that. I know that. But I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But that's me always, unfortunately.
That's okay.
And it's just seeking to justify it.
Yeah.
Or explain it on the basis that this particular tribe or the Amorites use these practices.
To make things go fast.
What I'm saying is, we today use practices
to make things go
achieve
fast.
Everything, whether it's on the tree or on the ground or whatever, to accelerate and increase the yield.
Exactly, and I hear your point. What I'm trying to say to you is that even with those practices today, you can't get around it. So Israel, they've got their peach trees and they've got amazing fruit produce in Israel. No matter what they might do to make those trees grow faster and stronger and better and quicker, you still can't touch it for the first 3 years if you're keeping oil, if you're doing it properly. If you are, yeah.
Yeah, I know, but the point comes back to you're saying it's because it says so. That's the end.
That's ultimately, yeah. So we're getting, but
make it more palatable.
That one does. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, let's read on a bit more, but let's read on. Okay, this is also written by the Rambam and the Guy for Perplex. But what seems closer to the realm of reason, Mark, take it away.
Is to say that this mitzvah is meant to serve as a reminder of the act of creation. For all things were created on the first day, and each one emerged into actuality on its proper day. And likewise, all the plants of the earth were hidden until the third day. And although they sprouted on the third day, nevertheless they were not visible until the fourth day, when the luminaries were hung in the heavens.
Yeah, so again, now let's just make it clear here. Days do not mean 24-hour periods. We've been through this before in this class. It can't mean a 24-hour period if the sun's not been created and the moon. So we're saying here that Hashem put into all of creation everything that's meant to be, and there was a slow unpacking of everything in the world. Day 1, day 2, day 3. It was only on day 4 that you have the sun and the moon and the stars and all the luminaries that will ripen the fruits. That's on day 4. And day 5, as you're going to carry on saying, that's when everything is ripe, but there's no human beings to eat it. And day 6 is the first creatures and humans that can eat it. And hence, he says follows the idea that only on year 4 can you actually eat it in a holy state. And in year 5, you can eat it normally. For the first 3 years, mimicking creation, God could have created the world and everything could be there in one moment. Nothing's beyond Hashem. Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'ha'aretz. It could have been that, ex nihilo means that boom, the world just was. But instead, incrementally, everything just developed slowly out. It developed step by step by step. And then Kli Yakar is telling us, therefore, Orla is almost like a salute to that process. It's saying 1, 2, 3 years are related to 1, 2, 3 days. Day 4 was when the luminaries were making everything ripe. That relates to when everything's ready to go. And by the 5th year, you can start eating it. Pretty cool, eh? The idea of everything moving incrementally, taking its time. Hashem took step by step, and so too we in life. We want things to be fast and to be quick, but you got to take your time. It's got to take its time. I'll tell you an interesting story. This is true because it happened to me, as I like to relate to when I told my story on Shabbos as well, right? Years ago, when I was going to hear Rabbi Tats at the JLE, and he spoke about if you want to learn patience, if you want to learn how to really kind of get in touch with a side of you, to be patient, plant something that you want to eat. Go and plant and tend to that plant and look after it, and then eat it, and you'll have a sense of what that means to have a patience, to learn to exercise that point of savlana, of patience. So at that point, I went off and bought some radishes and some soil. I went to my garden and just packed it, made a little container, put the soil in, planted my radishes, and every day I would come in and I would back from work and I would water my radishes and watch them. And I'm looking around. I'm talking to probably a lot of green fingers in the room. You're all probably horticulturists with massive greenhouses and huge allotments. I'm sure you'll grow your own prize-winning marrows. No, Mark?
Not this year, that's funny enough, Rabbi Dov.
Well, maybe another year. But there was something.
Keith, on the other hand.
Yeah, Keith
is into aubergines.
Yes, you grow stuff. No.
I'm quite very keen.
Not just on vegetables.
Into a garden, never really vegetables.
Gardening,
rice
yes.
grows in England.
What?
Rice, it's amazing.
Rice?
Yes, grows for the first time, real basmati rice. I can't remember if in Kent or it's getting so hot that it enables.
Rice to be grown for the first time in the UK, that's pretty cool.
Well, tea is as well.
Sorry?
Tea.
Yeah,
growing tea.
well.
Look at we're learning so much there. I didn't know.
Yeah.
They're growing tea, they're growing rice. I hear with the
Vineyards.
Yes.
There are vineyards, that much I know. But the point is, let's get too carried away because we won't get to the main point that was asked about. But the point is that it taught me something incredible, that like I was watching and waiting because we're used to just going up to Tesco, Sainsbury's, or obviously Marks and Spencer or Waitrose or Fortnum Mason to just check. No, we go to get Coles, mate. Yeah. To pick up our fruit and veggies, right? And it's all just there. And nowadays, of course, we don't have to go out seasons because nothing's easy because they'll just ship it over. We're so used to just getting things on demand. But in those days, when people were really involved with agriculture and you had to wait, you planted, you had to wait and see. Your whole livelihood was waiting and see what happens because you plant and there's no Tesco's around the corner. You have to wait and see what will happen. Wait and see. Okay, and so this is a really nice, just to start off with the idea of this idea of Orla, this idea of Orla we see already in the Torah, that we have to already get patient and wait. I find again so much of the sadness that happens a lot of the time in the world today is because people are in that state of needing to know now. I need to know now. I want to know now. I need to have the answer now. Can you explain this to me now? I can't wait. I can't wait for it. And this brought me to the next source C, which I think again is like a really powerful notion that comes out from an episode in the book of Exodus that actually happens in a parasha called Kisisa, which is this all a dialogue happening after the golden calf, after the sin of the golden calf, at which point Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses is basically really entreating Hashem, trying to get the forgiveness for the Jewish people. And then at that point he actually gets the forgiveness. Hashem forgives him for the golden calf. That's where we get the 13 attributes of mercy. Hashem, Karachum V'Chanun. The 13 attributes of mercy are given over. And then there's this really fascinating dialogue between Hashem and Moshe. So Keith, we'll go around Keith. Yes. So what does it say? Source C. This is Moshe talking to Hashem. Source C.
Now, if I have truly gained your favour, pray let me know your ways, that I may know you and continue in your favour. Consider too that this nation is your people. Okay, this is Moshe asking Hashem, I'm at the stage now where you've forgiven the people, and I'm standing in front of you now, and the words in Hebrew actually are very famous, Hodieni na es darachecha. Tell me your ways. I want to know how you work. I want to understand you, Hashem. I want to understand how things... Now, the Gemara in Tractate Brachos says this is actually Moshe asking the famous question that we all know is out there, that every rabbi gets asked a few times a year, sometimes a few times a week, and occasionally a few times a day, which is, Rabbi, why do bad things happen to good people? That's what they say that Moshe was really asking Hashem. Like, what's going on? Explain it all to me. I want to understand what's happening, Hashem. Tell me now, please, what's going on. Carry on, Keith, yeah. And Hashem said, I will go in the lead, and I will lighten your burden.
Right, I'll go in the lead and you lighten your burden. So it's very cryptic. I will go ahead of you. I will go forward and I'm going to lighten your burden. So I'm going to go forward. And Moshe replies, unless you go in the lead, do not make us leave this place. Like, we're not going to go anywhere from here unless you're leading us. You have to lead us through this. For how should it be known that your people have gained your favor unless you go with us? Moshe is saying, like, we're still unsure whether we're totally forgiven. Unless you're with us, Hashem, we won't know that. So that we be distinguished, your people and I, from every people on the face of the earth. At that point, Hashem said to Moses, carry on Keith, Hashem said to Moses,
I will also do this thing that you have asked, for you have truly gained my favour, and I have singled you out by name. Okay, and then, right, so he says, okay, Hashem says to Moshe, okay, I will do what you've asked, I will be with your people, I will be with you, I'll go forward with you. And then Moshe asks this question seemingly again. He said, oh, let me behold your presence. And he says Hashem says to him, please let me know your presence. Okay? Hareini na es kevodecha. Please let me know your presence. And Hashem answers, I'll say this, I will make all my goodness pass before you, and I will proclaim before you the name Hashem and the grace that I grant you and the compassion I show. Continuing, but you cannot see my face, for a human being not see me and live. You can't see my face. You can't see panim. You can't see panai. Panai in Hebrew, lifnim. This was lifnim means beforehand. You can't see my panim, my lifnim. You can't see my face. You can't see what comes beforehand. And Hashem said, there is a place near me. Station yourself on the rock. Again, very cryptic things. Believe me, very, very cryptic what's going on here. But he says to Moshe, go into this rock. And as my presence passes by, I will put you in the cleft of the rock and shield you with my hand until you've passed by. And then here comes the real, most important part of what I'm trying to teach today. He says, then I will take my hand away and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen. In Hebrew, I'll move my hand away. You'll see that my back, but you won't see my face. You can see. English translations.
It's actually coming from something called Safaria.
Sorry to put it.
Yeah, so it's very, very cryptic, very extremely cryptic dialogue between Moses and Hashem at this point. He's asking, show me your way, show me what's going on, and don't move on without us. Hashem is like, okay, I won't move on without you. He says, please show me, please let me behold your kavod. And the most important point here, we need to know, is Hashem says, I will put you inside this rock, I will pass by, and once I pass by, I'll move my hand. Now, it's super quick, as Simon will tell you, because Hashem doesn't have a hand, doesn't have a body, and he is not a entity that he can move, right? So we have to look beyond this. Is obviously talking in analogical terms. How do you say it? Analogical. Yeah. What we're saying here somehow, and I've heard this from a number of different sources, is what Hashem is communicating to Moshe. He's saying, you want to see me, you want to know me, you will never understand me lifnim. You can't understand Hashem beforehand. The only way we can actually work out what's going on is me'achorai, is when you look backwards, when you have hindsight and you look back on a situation after you've gone through it. Me'achorai, from looking back, and we kind of take a look and we see what happens. That's how we can understand and see Hashem's hand in things. You'll never be able to see it from beforehand. You'll never be able to guess it from beforehand. You have to always go through a situation, and only afterwards you can understand these are why these things happen. This is why things happened. I'm gonna.
Can I just say?
Yeah, please.
So two things came to mind.
Yeah.
One contemporary, Raiders of the Lost Ark, the climax. Don't look when the ark is right. And the other
That's
one.
like Lot's wife, yeah.
Yeah, and Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah, don't look by.
So,
don't look by.
yeah.
That's the question. That's interesting. That's the last way. Don't look behind you. She said, "Don't look behind you at the destruction. There's something's being destructed, and that something's being destroyed." So I would say that's a different story. Raiders of the Lost Ark, I don't think we can bring in as a. But that's quite a funny one. You should bring that in, because I remember that film when I was a kid. The point is that we can only understand what's going on after, and therefore, again, let's go back to the main theme of the reframe. You're going through a difficult time. You're going through things that are hard. You're things that are really struggling. And what gives us a lot of, I think, hope in those moments is to say, look, we don't really know what's happening right now. We have to remain strong. We have to remain firm in our belief. And later on, we will be able to understand why this happened. And I think it might sound quite, okay, well, that's very easy for you to say, Rabbi Dov. You can say that if you want. But for the people I've spoken to who've gone through very challenging, difficult times, a lot of the time they've said that this has really been quite comforting to know that when you're living through it, you might not understand. You can't be sure. I'll tell you a story now. I mean, this is a story that one day I may share in the shul. So if I stay in the shul, you should have to pretend that you never heard it before. Do you understand? Right? I've got everyone's. When you've got a good story is like a diamond. You have to hold on to it, right? But such a good story, I can't not tell you this story right now. Is everyone okay with that? Have we got a deal?
Please
if I ever tell this story, I'm sure you have to keep it. Be like, wow, that was a really good story. Never heard that before. Deal? Okay, fine.
Is it better than the thank you story?
I thought it was a very good story, actually.
That was excellent. I told my wife about it.
Those who aren't there, #where. Okay, so this is the story, and I actually wrote it down. I heard this story from Song Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson, and this story is quite incredible. If you're listening at home, it's from Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson that I heard the story, on one of his shiurim. In August 1929, there was the massacre at Hebron. Are you familiar with the massacre of Hebron? Mm-hmm. Okay, when there were 69 Jews were murdered by the Arabs in Hebron. It was a big stoking up violence against Jews at that time. And the Jews in Hebron that were there was a yeshiva there, the Slabodki yeshiva, which was in Hebron. And many of the yeshiva students were murdered, and families were murdered. It was a pogrom, essentially, in Hebron. Not enough people talk about it, of course. It's whitewashed. One of the biggest issues, of course, was that the British police that were there essentially just turned their back and let it happen. And at the very last minute, blew a few whistles and kind of shot in the air. But they essentially let it happen. They were in charge essentially of the security in the situation and didn't really do anything. And the Hebron massacre has gone down always as one of the darkest times in that whole mandate period, where 69 Jews were murdered. So the story is that there was a boy that had been studying at the yeshiva, and he was from Philadelphia. He was from American Philadelphia. Yes, in those days, even before the state of Israel, there had been some boys who traveled from America to study, because the Slabodki yeshiva, which was living in Lithuania, some of them had moved to Hebron, and he was studying and learning in this yeshiva in Hebron, and he was doing very well. But his family was called Berman, the Berman family, and he was doing very well, but his parents were very nervous about the security situation, and they wanted him to come back to Philadelphia. and they wrote, said, you must come home. Now the head of the yeshiva didn't know what to do because he thought this boy had a lot of potential. So he went to the rabbi at the time of Jerusalem was called Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank. You got the name, Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank. He was the great rabbi, he was a rav in Jerusalem. And he asked Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank to write a letter to the parents in Philadelphia to say that this boy's doing so well, it's safe, don't worry, everything will be okay. To which he did. He wrote the letter to the parents, and the parents received the letter, and he was able to stay. Unfortunately, he was one of the 69 that was murdered in Hebron, but they'd received the letter. Now, this story happened obviously to this Rabbi Tzvi Pesach Frank. You can only imagine what it was like for him when he found out afterwards that, he persuaded the boy's parents to let him stay. And this was something which was so difficult for him. He carried this so heavily, for his whole life. Now, jump forward with the story. The story is that Tzvi Pesach Frank himself was meant to be in Hebron that Shabbat himself. He was meant to be there. He was meant to have gone. But he didn't go because there was a bris of his grandson. And his grandson's bris was in Jerusalem that Shabbos, and that's why he didn't go. And his grandson was called Yaakov Frank. Now, let's fast forward, 1929, let's go forward to the early 1950s. This young boy, Yaakov, is now in the Israeli army in the reserve unit, and he's doing training in the Tzahal, right? They were doing training somewhere in the hills of Jerusalem, and it was a rainy day, it was horrific rain, so they were sitting in the trenches, and they were saying, you can go home, you will go home for showers, but you have to wait till the rain finishes. So he was sitting, he was talking to the guy next to him, and they're having a chat, and it turns out the guy next to him was a historian, he was actually an expert on the British Mandate period, and he was in the army with him. So he said, what's your name? He said, Yaakov Frank. He said, was your grandfather Tzvi Pesach Frank? He said, yes. He said, wow, that's an amazing thing. He was such an, he's still alive. He is a great rabbi, and that's amazing. So he said, yeah, but I want to tell you the story. It's a very sad and unfortunate story of what happened, that my grandfather actually wrote the letter that this boy stayed in. So he goes, you don't understand. He said, you don't know half the story. I said, what do you mean? He said, let me tell you something you don't know. He said, this boy, Berman, his family were actually very wealthy bankers in Philadelphia, and they were a very prominent family in America. And when they got the news to say that their son had been murdered, they did not rest until justice had been met, for the British especially, because they had turned their back, essentially. The mandate, the governor at the time, the governor general, had been absolutely terrible. And they demanded justice. They went to the State Department in America and they demanded justice. They demanded something should happen, heads should roll. And because of that, the Governor General was dismissed because they made such a stink. The Governor General was dismissed. I think it was Herbert Samuel, if I'm not mistaken. And instead, a new Governor General was put in, and his name was, now it's written as differently to have it. His name was Arthur Wauchope. It's spelled W-A-U-C-H-O-P-E. However you might pronounce that. W-A-U-C-H-O-P-E. Wauchope. That's how they pronounce it. Now in Israel, you actually have streets called Wauchope. But Arthur Wauchope, or Wauchope, I think is now how you pronounce it. Now lo and behold, this Arthur Wauchope, he was a Christian, had pretty strong Zionist tendencies. He was a pro. And I did the fact-checking afterwards on the story, and because of him, the white paper that had been in place was ended, and the amount of Jews that were allowed into Israel at that time, when he took over in 1930, tripled. It went up from 192,000 Jews to 400,000 Jews. The amount of land that they were able to have went from 4,000 acres up to 100,000 acres in the time of Wauchope. Again, I looked it up and did the fact-checking as well. Immigration was open. That was in 1930 all the way. They stopped him. I think, what year was it? In 1937 or something, they realized this guy was a little bit too pro-Zionist, so they kicked him out. But imagine, in 1933, when Hitler came to power, the immigration was open to Israel. So many Jews were able to get to Israel because the Governor General at the time, this Arthur Wauchope, was open to this, and he was open to allowing Jews to come. This is from Wikipedia. Wauchope's administration was generally sympathetic to Zionist aspirations. By 1941, the former chief immigration officer for the Mandate could write in his book, Palestine and Policy, that the first 4 years of his term were the heyday of Zionist history in Palestine. Not only did immigration go up threefold, the Jewish population increased from 174,606 to 329,358, but Jews increased their land holdings, like I said, and everything. The Jewish businesses and commerces enjoyed economic boom. So this man said, look, nothing can justify death, right? Nothing ever justify. But this boy Berman died, and because of the family making such a big deal out of it, they changed the governor general. This guy was in. Who knows that when 1948, when Israel fought back, they now had 600,000 Jews to be able to. That was a drop in the ocean compared to the Arab armies. But there could have been 100,000 Jews, but there was 600,000 Jews that were there fighting back. There would have been many, many less Jews. And he said something like, because of your grandfather, because of what he did, actually, maybe because he wrote that letter, maybe that's why the state of Israel actually could exist. So the son Yaakov heard this, and he's like, you know what? Like, I have to go home and tell my grandfather this story. So they were released in the army. It was a Friday morning, and he would normally have gone home or whatever, but he said, I must go quickly now and tell. It was a Thursday night. It was Thursday night. And he said, I must go tell my grandfather now. So he came to his grandfather's house and knocked on the door. His grandfather came out and he said, Grandfather, I want to tell you this. I just spoke to someone now, and he just told me this story. I did not know this, that this Berman boy that died, I know this has been heavy on your heart for so long. It was actually his family that caused the governor general to be kicked out. This new one came in. And many people might say this was one of the greatest things that could happen for the Zionist cause. And I just wanted to let you know that. And his grandfather said to him, you don't know what that means to me, to hear that. You have no clue what that means. So you can't fathom what that means to hear that from you. Anyway, the next day, it was Shabbos, and Friday afternoon, and Shabbos morning, this Yaakov he was walking over to see his grandfather, to say good Shabbos to his grandfather, and on the way he was met by his brother-in-law, who told him, unfortunately, you won't be able to see him because he passed away. He passed away on the Friday. Just before he heard this news.
Just before or after?
Just after, sorry. He heard the news, and he passed away straight after. By the way, there's a story about this Yaakov Frank, when he met the Lubavitcher Rebbe and told him the story, the Lubavitcher Rebbe said that the Musa Haska, which means the lesson you learn from this, remember we talked last week about the lesson you learn from any situation, the lesson you learn from this is you've got a good thing to do, don't delay.
There's some good news to share. Don't delay in sharing that good news. Like, if you've got something good, let people know. Don't wait on that.
I just think this is people like to unpick stories, and it's like happenstance and maybes. And again, we don't know. And again, we don't know anything. But oftentimes you go through a situation, it's only la'acharai, looking backwards, that you can understand and see why difficult things happen. And that's why I really believe that this reframe called wait and see is just just to have it in your head. Again, these are just brain tattoos. Each one of these things I've given you, I was sent not sold, let a cloud be your pillar, moon days, and Kohen Paro, wait and see. I want these to be your brain tattoos. Mine as well. I'm talking to myself as much as you. These should be our brain tattoos, that when we're going through those difficult times, we've got these mantras in our mind to say, look, what do we really know? Is this bad? We think it's bad. It looks bad. It might be bad. I don't know if it's bad. It might not be bad. It might actually not be that bad. We don't know yet. We don't yet know. I mean, this is actually where it goes to the quote I want to bring you here, the famous quote now. It's a very famous story in Saul's D. And why I want to bring this, because it gets very confused. People get very confused with this source. Look at Saul's D. Where are we? Here we go. So Saul's D is a famous Gemara in Brachos with Rabbi Akiva. Rav Chuna said that Rabbi Meir said, and so it was taught in the Baraita, in the name of Rabbi Akiva. One must always accustom oneself to say, everything that God does, He does for the best. This in Hebrew is, Kol da'avid Rahmana l'tav avid. And I'll come back to this in a minute, because people translate this oftentimes say, Gam zu l'tova. Have you heard this before? Gam zu l'tova? Gam zu l'tova means this too is for the good. It's not the same thing as saying, Kol da'avid Rahmana l'tav avid. Everything Hashem does is for the good. What that means is that we can go through situations which are bad and they can feel bad, because sometimes it can be quite insensitive, and someone's going through something difficult and someone slaps you in the back saying, it's gamzula tova, it's all fine. It's not fine, it's actually horrific, it's terrible. But when you say, Kol the Avid Rahmana, everything that Hashem does is for the good, means that we might not see it yet, we might not know it yet, but for whatever reason, there is a purpose behind this. There is a reason why this is happening, and we don't yet know why. Now, the famous story of Rabbi Akiva, Mark, it's good to know this one, because you can quote it whenever you want. Very, very famous story. The Gemara relates. Denise, you haven't read yet. Please read for us. The Gemara relates, like this incident.
Like this incident when Rabbi Akiva was walking along the road and came to a certain city. He inquired about lodging, and they didn't give him any. He said, everything that God does, he does for the best.
Okay, that was his thing. Like, he comes up to the door, he sees there's, potentially rooms, but they're like, no lodging, no room. Call man David Rahman Latava. Okay, carry on.
Yes, this is a famous story.
Yes.
He went and slept in a field, and he had with him a rooster, a donkey, and a candle. A gust of wind came and extinguished the candle. A cat came and ate the rooster, and the lion came and ate the donkey. He said, everything that God does, he does for the best.
Pause that. That doesn't mean Rabbi Akiva was sitting there going, this is amazing, wow, incredible, this is so cool, look, I'm just like, I haven't able to sleep, and I just like lost everything, I've lost my candle, I've lost my... It's incredible, wow. But what he's saying is, like, I don't understand why this happened. This probably really sucks. It's not great, but I understand that, like, whatever Hashem does, there is a reason behind it. I don't know what that is yet. I'm waiting to see, but let's see. Carry on, Denise. And then that night,
an army came and took the city into captivity. It turned out that Rabbi Akiva alone was not in the city and had no lit candle, no noisy rooster or donkey to give away his location, was saved. He said to them, didn't I tell you? Everything that God does, he does for the best.
Now, like I said, so Denise knows this is a very oft quoted story. It's well known. The story of Rabbi Akiva, the rooster, the donkey, and the candle. And again, whether a person looks at this and says, "Oh, me a favor," hindsight is. But I really strongly believe, in terms of just getting through those difficult situations in life, and you're like, why has this happened? Why on earth? Like, I've done everything right. It's not like you're being irresponsible. It's one thing when you miss the flight because you were busy, at the betting shop, and you putting, some bets on it, and then, I missed your flight, and then, this is for the best. That's called just being irresponsible. Don't be an irresponsible person. When you do everything right, you get to the flight on time, you packed your bags on time, you're meant to be on that flight, you're meant to be on that flight, you're in the queue, and you're ready to go somewhere, and you've done everything you're meant to do, and then the thing comes up and says the flight's been cancelled because of whatever. Okay, and you get really frustrated, and there are some people that got absolutely sugar, and we've all seen people have crazy moments where they'll throw things on the floor and they'll go absolute breakdown, right? But there's that impression we say, look, I don't know why this flight's been cancelled. I don't know why I'm not meant to be in this city at that time, but for whatever reason, I'm not meant to be on that flight. Wasn't meant to be today. For whatever reason, I don't know yet. It might be 5 years, it might be 10 years, it might be in 20, it might be in 30 years' time. I will understand why that is. But there's a reason why I'm not meant to be there. And then you walk off. Now, some might look at you and say, well, you're mad, you're crazy. But I would look at that and say, okay, well, you're going to have a bit of, you're going to be able to ride that storm. You will ride that storm in a better way. You'll be happier, you'll move on with your life. You won't sit in sit in the morning. You'll be able to just move on. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's a cinch. These are simple things to do. These are hard. It's hard to be able to get into that mindset. And it takes a lot of practice, by the way. But I do strongly believe that if someone's not being irresponsible and these things happen, you say those words, there's a reason why this happened. I don't know what it is yet. I'm excited to see how that will pan out. I don't know how it will pan out, but there's a reason why. There's this story, again, I brought some stories there, but I think it's some good stories, right? This is Rabbi Elchanan Wasserman, who, if you don't yet know about him, you should know about Rabbi Elchanan Wasserman. Was one of the greatest, in fact, one of the greatest Talmud sages, rabbinical sages, who was murdered by the Nazis in Kovna, 1941. I'm sure probably many of you have heard of Rabbi Elchanan Wasserman, one of the greatest. He was in America and he got the boat back. Even though he could have stayed in America, he took the boat back in 1939 to be with his students. They were begging him to stay in America. He said, I can't leave my family and my students. He went back to the jaws of death and was murdered by the Lithuanians in 1941. I remember reading this 20 odd years ago, this story, reading this, and it's had a huge impact on me and my life, so I wanted to share it with you. Sherry, take it away, source E. This is Rabbi Elchanan, the last things that he said. He was in Kovna, with his family and friends. They were kind of hiding out, waiting. This is just maybe a day or two before they were finally rounded up and taken to a fort outside the city where they were all massacred. If anyone's ever been on a trip to Lithuania I was actually there, I went on a trip to Lithuania and went to this fort where all the Jews of Kovna were basically massacred. But yeah, Cherry, take it away, source E.
Rav Elkanan spent his final days at the Kovna home of Reb R.A. Friedman, which adjoined the Grodzinski home. As the roundups and brutal massacres unfolded around them, Rav Elkanan struggled to answer the question that was on everyone's lips: why? When he was approached and asked, why my mother and father, why my wife and children, he had nothing to reply. I still don't know the answer to that question, Rav Elkanan told his students, but at least I understand why the question cannot be answered. He then proceeded
to relate the following parable. Yeah, so this parable, again, and I've said this many times, I've given over, and now's the time to say it, because whether it resonates tonight, it might not resonate with you, but it might resonate someone watching this or sometime in the future. But this is a very strong parable. Once a man who knew nothing at all about agriculture asked a farmer to teach him about farming. The farmer took him to his field and asked him what he saw. I see a beautiful piece of land, lush with grass, he said. Then stood aghast while the farmer ploughed up the grass and turned the beautiful green field into a mass of shallow brown ditches. Why did you ruin the field, he demanded. Be patient, you will see, said the farmer. Then the farmer showed his guest a sack full of plump kernels of wheat and said, tell me what you see, and the visitor described the nutritious, inviting grain, and then once more watched in shock as the farmer ruined something beautiful. This time he walked up and down the furrows, dropping the kernels into the open ground and covered them with clods of soil. Are you insane? The man demanded. First you destroy the field and then you ruin the grain. Be patient, you will see. This continued with every subsequent stage of the process of cultivating, harvesting, and grinding the wheat, with the visitor questioning the farmer's every move. Finally, the farmer opened the oven and took out the freshly baked bread, crisp and golden, with an aroma that made the visitor's mouth water. Come, the farmer said. He led his guests to the kitchen table where he cut the bread and offered his now pleased visitor a liberally buttered slice. Now, the farmer said, now you understand. Shem is the farmer and we are the fools who do not begin to understand his ways or the outcome of his plan. Khan told his students as the footfalls of destruction grew louder. Only when this process is complete will the Jewish people know why all this happened. Then when Mashiach has finally come, we will know why everything, even what it seems to be destructive and painful, is part of the process that will produce goodness and beauty. And so, again, this is Rabbi Hanan speaking to his students. But now, this is a man of faith, granted, a man of faith that we can't even begin to even touch, the kind of faith that he lived on and lived with. But I do truly believe that this reframe, I did kind of set up tonight, so it's going to be a bit more, we're talking about Hashem in this one, but the idea of the reframe of saying, wait and see. I don't know yet why this is happening. I have to be responsible. I can't just do the whole God's in charge, I'm just going to sit back with my feet up. We have to be involved. Like, lo alecha hamlacha ligmor. It's not for you to finish all the work. That doesn't mean you put your feet up and wait. You have to be involved. You have to be responsible. You have to do everything you can. But with this attitude, with this reframe of a wait and see, let's wait and see what will happen. I don't know. It's dark. It's difficult. We live in this time now, right? We're looking at the world around us. What's going on? The way the Jews are in this country. How can it be that everything's so topsy-turvy, where these crazies on the left have united with people who go so against their own principles, they're uniting against Jews, and we feel so at threat. Wait and see. We just don't know what's going to happen at the end. We have no clue what will be at the end of this, but we have this faith that it's going gum, right? Kol man David Rahmana, the top of it. There's at the end of the day, it's going towards a situation which is good. We have to hold on strong. That's on a macro level, but on a micro level, I think it's even more powerful in your own lives, in our own lives. When we go through moments of difficulty, distress, hardship, pain, suffering, we have to get help when we need to. We have to reach out and be there for each other, of course. There's no question about that. We don't absolve that. We don't say someone who's suffering and say, look, Habibi, it's fine. It will be good. Don't worry, it'll be good. And that's insensitive. We don't do that. We don't say that because it's not, for us, we can say it to ourselves. We don't say it to someone else. Someone comes to your door and says, I need to help. You don't say, it'll be good, off you go. To other people we're there, we show up and we listen. But to ourselves, we always say, look, wait and see. Let's see. We don't know what will happen at the end of the day. This looks bad. It looks like it'll be terrible. This might be the greatest thing that ever happened. This might be, and I've said that to myself many times over the years, things that have bad happened. I said, you know what? This might be the best thing that ever happened to me. And I've said that to others too. This thing that's happened to you right now, this might end up being the best thing that ever happened to you. And very, very often it is. And people look back saying, wow, this actually was the best thing that could have happened. So I want to finish with that. I think it's a great mantra to have. I hope this has been interesting. And as we build up these reframes, each week, each incrementally, you've got a whole toolkit now of things that you can help you and others around you as we go through the challenges of life.
So would you say it's Bashet?
Thank you.
Bashet.
Yeah, Bashet is a nice one. It's Bashet. It's meant to be. There's a reason that Bashet is where you say it is Bashet.